And you join us 3 weeks on from a blockbuster round 2 at the Algarve roller coaster in Portimao. Jorge Martin taking victory, the Portuguese Grand Prix, to see himself now 18 points clear at the top of the World Championship after only 2 rounds. A pretty commanding lead at this early stage, but there were so many storylines for us to pick apart ahead of this round 3 of 2024. Champions colliding, Marc Marquez and Pedro Bagnaia coming together on the final lap, and Pedro Acosta making history as well to become the youngest ever MotoGP podium finisher, the 3rd youngest in history. What lies ahead for him over 2024? Can he break Marc Marquez's record? So many questions for us to ask. And with Simon Crafar, unfortunately not here, he didn't join us at the start of the show. Some very last minute travel issues means that our favourite Kiwi unfortunately won't be here. So we've substituted in Matt Burt to join us for the official preview here on Gear Up. Good to have you with us, Bertie. And we will kick off with the big news that Fabio Quartararo, Yamaha's main man, will be staying in blue for another 2 years. It caught a few people by surprise, this one. The 2021 world champion now with the Monster Energy Yamaha squad through to the end of the 2026 season. Yamaha have had their struggles. Fabio was the big name out there on the rider market, but he stays put. Did it surprise you when the news filtered through?
A little bit, Jack. Yeah, I must admit, I mean, with all the murmurings around the paddock about this possible switch to Aprilia, I think we were getting excited that one of the big pieces of the puzzle might be slotting in somewhere else. But we know, Jack, Fabio's buying the drinks in Austin here on Sunday night. If the numbers are to be believed, a €12 million bumper payday coming the way of Fabio Quartararo. There's confirmation on your screen to the news that he's staying with Yamaha. It's huge, Jack, for Yamaha. You can't underestimate the importance of them keeping a rider of his skill, his talent on board that motorcycle. I was actually with Yamaha boss Lynn Jarvis just briefly before we jumped on the plane in London to come to Austin yesterday, and his word was essential. It was absolutely imperative that they kept him. They've obviously had to dig deep into the cash fund, but you have to say it could prove to be money well spent, and it's a massive leap of faith as well for Fabio. You know, Yamaha are in a big hole right now. The bike isn't competitive. They're playing this big game of catch-up, and it's massive trust that he's put in the Yamaha and their engineers.
As you say, reportedly Fabio now becomes the best paid rider on the entirety of the MotoGP grid. Again, the media reporting that he signs that Yamaha deal despite having an offer on the table from Aprilia. It was a lot of speculation that Massimo Rivola and the Noale factory were hot favourites to try and capture Fabio's signature, but he stays put as a result. Of course, we know that from this season onwards, along with Honda as well, Yamaha do have the concessions. Fabio's spoken at length about the change in attitude, the change in mindset. This, I think, is without doubt the biggest indicator yet that Fabio is true to his word, and he has been impressed by the change that Yamaha have put in place.
Yeah, and obviously the financial aspect has come into it, Jack, and then you wonder what Fabio's options outside of Aprilia were. Ducati, full house, they've got so much talent there, no obvious place for him to go there. He's obviously not going to want to leave Yamaha to go to Honda. KTM look like they've got all their seats secured, so if he wasn't able to make the numbers stack up at Aprilia, really he was only left with the option to stay with Yamaha. I like the loyalty side of it. Fabio has spent his entire MotoGP career with Yamaha, but it did feel like it was ripe for a change. I think as a neutral, I would have really been looking forward to seeing what Fabio could do on the Aprilia, because I think at the moment we know the Aprilia is far superior motorcycle to the Yamaha, and I think with the right man on board, and that man is the right man looking on your screens right now, this was a couple of years ago in Barcelona, wasn't it? Fabio can be a winning machine, but fair play to him. You know, he's obviously been sold this commitment over the next 2 or 3 years by Yamaha. We know they bought in Max Bartolini, headhunted him from Ducati. He's implementing these big behind-the-scenes changes, so something somewhere, aside from a skip full of cash, has convinced Fabio that Yamaha can indeed turn it around, and in a relatively short space of time as well.
Massimo Rivola, the Aprilia CEO, has come out and said already that he doesn't want riders on his bikes that are purely infused and motivated by what the check says. I mean, I think it's expected for the man that it is writing those checks to say something like that. But however, the numbers in the media reportedly, €12 million Fabio has been paid per season compared to an offer of €4 million at Aprilia. But to weigh up the balance of a competitive bike over what he's going to get paid, Fabio only 24 years of age, so it's not as if this is the last deal he's ever going to sign in the MotoGP World Championship. But as a neutral, do you think there's reason for people to be a bit disappointed that we're not going to see him out there fighting at the front, certainly from the start of next year, unless Yamaha are able to come up with something very, very special in the short term?
I think so. I mean, I think when you look at the riders in MotoGP these days, Fabio, in terms of his skill set, his talent level, he's top three. You know, he's as good as Pedro Bagnaia. He's right up there with Marc Marquez as well. I just feel like, potentially as a neutral, it would have been great to have seen somebody of his ilk move onto a new brand. We know that Bagnaia's staying put, of course. We know Brad Binder's going to be at KTM. They've all got their lead riders, haven't they, the factories? And I just felt like it maybe was a great opportunity for Aprilia, with Fabio potentially looking to move on to packages new, for them to move in there. You can't knock Fabio though. No. He's what, mid-20s? If somebody comes along with that kind of a payoff, you're gonna take it. But yeah, I think it would have been awesome. It would have been fantastic for the neutrals for him to see him on the RSGP next year, because it seems like a bike as well that would have really suited Fabio's riding style. But alas, he's going to be at Yamaha for a couple of years, and all we can hope for is that they find a competitive M1, and Fabio's going to be back at the front pretty soon. Absolutely,
no excuses now. The pair are going to be together from now all the way through to the end of 2026. Fabio has spoken at length about the fact that he wants to be up there winning races and fighting for a world championship again, so they've got to try and make it happen. Right, looking at this weekend now, and we need to reflect on Portimao 3 weeks ago. The bust-up continuing after Marc Marquez and Pedro Bagnaia came together. I mean, at the start of the year, we were crying out for some storylines to carry us through the year. Well,
we didn't have to wait long, did we?
We didn't have to wait long at all. It's happened already. If you didn't join us in Portimao, of course, the race direction came out, the FIM MotoGP steward saying that it was a racing incident. No further action has been taken on either parties, which I think we all agree is the correct decision. But we're going to see them together in a press conference that you're hosting. Do we feel that this is going to affect already frosty relationship,
Jack,
a little bit worse?
Let's be honest, I mean, over the last 2 or 3 years, people inside the paddock, ourselves included, fans all around the world have been saying that the sport's been lacking the next big rivalry, a bit of needle. We didn't have to wait long, did we, before Marc Marquez was causing a bit of chaos. Second race at Ducati. Portimao was just a classic example of two proper heavyweights flexing their muscles. They didn't want to get beaten by each other, and unfortunately, two heavyweights flexing their muscles, and they both end up on the floor. Not good for the championship. This is it. The Marc on the inside, the exact same move that he put on Jorge Martin in the sprint. It's just that Pedro Bagnaia was not going to give it up without an almighty fight. He says that Marc was too aggressive closing the line. Marc conversely says that Pedro was too optimistic with the gap that was there. I mean, this will be one of the major talking points of the entire season. Round two, I mean, it's already a headache for Ducati management behind the scenes, but it's what we want as neutrals. It's two of the best riders in the championship going at it, hammer and tongs, laying it all on the line. You know, Marc was saying, wasn't it, it was only for a couple of extra points, but Pedro said even at this early stage of the season, that's what you're fighting for. For me, it was the right call. Marc did say it was borderline. He felt like clearly he wouldn't have been surprised if there was a penalty coming their way, but I've got to say, if you're asking me to stick my head on the line, I'll probably go 60-40, the blame game on Bagnaia there. But I mean, it's certainly spiced up, hasn't it, for this weekend and beyond.
We've certainly come to expect that from Bagnaia now when he has gone toe-to-toe with riders. I'm thinking of the incident with Maverick Vinales in Le Mans in particular as well, where maybe you could have asked the question of, Maverick has come through, could you give him the space and allow him to go? But Bagnaia has proved time and time again that if there's a tiny window of opportunity, he's going to go and take it. Sometimes it pays off. On this incident, it clearly didn't. How is this going to affect the rest of the season, do we think now? Because already everyone was speaking ahead of the year. Marc coming in was going to ruffle some feathers. For it to have happened so early, I mean, what a headache for Ducati to try and sort out at this early stage.
Potentially a humongous headache coming for Ducati, but they would have known this when they signed Marc. They know the kind of rider that he is. He's all in. He's very, very aggressive. You know, this was, for me, Pedro Bagnaia not wanting at the second race of the season to be beaten by a guy who's coming in to take his crown. I mean, Pecco's been the undisputed top dog at Ducati, hasn't he, the last 2 or 3 years, and round two, Marc has come in. I mean, surprise, surprise, Jack, you know, we know that the pair of them had completely different opinions on what happened. It brings that extra bit of spice to this weekend. It's going to carry on throughout the entire season. I mean, it's the kind of juicy rival that we have been waiting for. You know, Bagnaia versus Marquez has got the potential to be a top-notch rivalry. You know, he's the factory star, Pecco. There's the independent rider, Marc, who's trying to get back to his best form. And I can't wait for this weekend because you know as well there are going to be two guys that are going to be fighting at the front in the sprint on Saturday and the Grand Prix on Sunday.
Well, that's the thing. Marc Marquez, in years previous, whenever he arrived here, it was a foregone conclusion. Marc was going to win the race on Sunday. He was just so dominant around this place. Now that he's got the bike underneath him to help that talent that he's got around this circuit, he is going to be a huge favourite coming into the weekend. And you feel as though, given what Bagnaia was able to do here last year, he might be his closest challenger. Pecco's so dominant in the sprint and then, of course, made that mistake on the Grand Prix on Sunday under pressure from Alex Rins, but you felt as though they really should have won both races here last year. Are those the two big names coming into this weekend?
I mean, this weekend it's all just perfectly poised. It's so set up to be an absolute corker, isn't it? I mean, as you mentioned, last year Jack Bagnaia was pole position, dominant in the sprint, 2.5 seconds clear of Alex Rins when he crashed at turn 2. Turn 2 on lap 8, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Marc Marquez, I mean, Marc could push a 3-wheel shopping trolley around here quicker than most people could do on a motorcycle. I would be absolutely gobsmacked if Marc doesn't win at least the sprint or the Grand Prix here this weekend. This is where Marc is going to truly understand where he's at and what his potential is on the Ducati. He's never been a big fan of Qatar. Likewise, Portimao. This is Marc's manor. This is his backyard. This weekend is where we're going to see just how explosive he can be and can he produce the performance he did at Honda back in the day and dominate here this weekend. What he won't be hoping for is a repeat of this, of course. I mean, he will tell you that there was a gap on the inside. What's going to be frustrating Pecco as well is not the fact that he was involved in this incident, but it was an unusual Sunday for Bagnaia. He was not at the races at all. He did not have the pace. I mean, it's not very often that you say that, and this was adding to his frustration. One, he'd been picked off by Pedro Acosta. He'd then been picked off by Marc Marquez, and that was not going down well with the world champion. He just did not have the speed for the podium. And
it all comes from a big mistake, so unlike him, on the Saturday in the sprint as well, where he should have won that one. And he held his hands up and said, that was my own error. It was a costly error, that did rob him of victory in the sprint, and to then not have the pace to be able to back that up on Sunday, it was a weekend to forget and a surprising one, given just how quick he was the last time we went there for Bagnaia.
You've got to look at his record as well. I mean, obviously we do our prep for our commentary notes, and Bagnaia is the epitome of Mr. Consistency. Yes, we've seen him drop the ball a few times. He's fantastic at bouncing back in. He never dwells on setbacks, and I don't expect him to here this weekend as well. But since the new sprint era came in last year, Portimao a couple of weeks ago was only the second time in the new format that Bagnaia has not scored at least one podium across a weekend. So it just shows how kind of off the ball he was in Portimao. And I think he said himself, it's time for redemption at the rodeo. So it's going to be fascinating to see how he does come out swinging this weekend, because he will come out swinging, because he wants payback on this circuit. And he wants payback on the 93 as well.
Absolutely. Another ridiculous stat as well. I think Portimao for Bagnaia has now made it 22 consecutive Grand Prix where he's either finished on the podium or failed to finish, which is a remarkable run, that when he sees the checkered flag, he's on the podium, but sometimes he's not able to see the checkered flag. That was one of the big stories that no doubt will continue this weekend. Another one that's not only going to continue this weekend, but you feel for potentially the next 10 years in the sport. Didn't take long for Pedro Acosta to arrive and show everybody what he's about. Second Grand Prix and already on the podium, becoming the third youngest man in history. We've spoken at length about him already. I don't think there's new ground for us to go over, but wow, what a superstar.
Astonishing. MotoGP has welcomed a new, genuine superstar. We thought he was good on debut in Qatar when the first rider he overtook in his MotoGP career was none other than Marc Marquez, but this was just off the scale phenomenal in Portimao a couple of weeks ago. This was a move early on Brad Binder. He was streaked away easily from the factory KTMs. And then just the confidence, the belief. I mean, he'd never been to Portimao before, never ridden a MotoGP bike around Portimao. Lots of question marks from the outside, lots of question marks, I'm sure, inside his own head. Makes light work, doesn't he, of Marc Marquez, just as he did in Qatar a couple of weeks ago. And then the move that he made on the world champion, Pecco Bagnaia. I mean, people say it's hard to overtake him on a GP. This guy cut through on Brad Binder, Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia. Three of the hardest riders you'll ever try and overtake in MotoGP. It was absolutely astonishing. He's been a breath of fresh air. Where will this young man be in 2 or 3 years' time? I mean, coming into the season, I read that stat about him having till the Saxon Ring to take the record away from Marc Marquez as being the youngest ever Premier Class winner. And I thought, not a chance, not a hope in hell. Well, to be honest, I've had to revise that opinion because I genuinely think he could do it, because he's just been nothing short of sensational. He's a privilege to watch, a pleasure to watch, and we're looking at him on the podium there, the first of many, many podiums in MotoGP. Absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely. You feel as though now it's a question of when, not if, he wins his first Grand Prix. As you say, has up until the German Grand Prix to beat Marc Marquez's record and become the youngest ever Premier Class race winner. I mean, I was going to say, you feel it might be difficult this weekend with just the amount of talent and riders that go incredibly well around this place. But then again, you wouldn't be surprised if he's up there doing it. You
really wouldn't. I mean, he was the winner here in Moto2 last year. It's a track that he goes well at, and he would have taken a whole bunch of confidence, Jack, away from Portimao, knowing that he can just turn up to a circuit where he's got zero experience in MotoGP and he can be competitive and he can be fighting at the front. That's what impressed me. And he's making it look so easy. I read an interview actually with his crew chief, Paul Trevathan, they've obviously clicked fantastically well straight away together. And I think Paul said, I know it's only 2 races, but I feel like I shouldn't be calling him a rookie because he's such a fast learner. He takes everything on board that the team ask him to do. You know, he gets bombarded with messages from his data guy. He says he wakes up every morning, he's got 20 messages. And the thing is, what they tell him, he goes out on circuit and just is able to immediately adjust or implement what he has to do. That is a special, unique talent that can do that, and that's what the number 31 is doing right now. It's absolutely, it could be a game-changing rider in MotoGP.
The after effects of Acosta's arrival for the other riders in the Pira Mobility Group family, in particular those on the factory seats at the moment, a lot of talk about Jack Miller and where his future lies. I mean, the fact that he's arrived and been so quick, so fast, certainly will do his job prospects for next year no favours. You feel as though it's almost a done deal already. You'd be absolutely gobsmacked if Acosta's not in orange next year. But huge question marks now on Brad Binder. He really has to deliver because Binder is KTM's chosen man. He's got that bumper contract that was handed to him last year. They expect him to deliver, and already he's been pushed by the young pretender.
And that's what KTM want. I mean, they want to see how much more Brad Binder's got in him. And I think Brad will like it. You know, he'll like some inter-competition because you want to be the top dog in that little group, you know, that Pira Mobility group. And this will only, hopefully, spur Brad on. You know, I mean, I think he's already been hugely complimentary about the performances that Pedro has delivered. And it's what you need. I mean, KTM, the Pira Mobility Group, must be rubbing their hands because Acosta has the potential to take them to that next level, and hopefully he'll be dragging the likes of Miller and Brad with him. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be Jack Miller and Brad Binder right now because it's going to be very, very difficult to beat Pedro moving forward as well, because he's obviously just a once-in-a-generation talent. He's a guy that comes along every sort of 10, 15, 20 years.
Let's talk about the World Championship leader then. What a start to 2024 it has been for Jorge Martin, the Spaniard at this early stage. 18 points clear, and I know we don't like to look at the World Championship after only 2 rounds because there is a lot still to come, but that's a pretty impressive lead so far and has failed to finish off the podium yet. Compare his start this year to his previous starts in 2023, 2022 and 2021, and you think that this guy really means business this year. He's going to take a lot of stopping. We spoke just before the show, didn't we, off camera, Jack? I mean, he has been super impressive. The only rider, I think, that's qualified on the front row in both races, a pole in Qatar, sprint winner, Grand Prix winner, on the podium in both sprints, on the podium in both Grand Prix. We've always known that Jorge's been blessed with phenomenal raw speed. I think the key word right now for Jorge is maturity. He used it, said it himself in Portimao. You know, you don't have to win races by 3 or 4 seconds like he tried to do in Indonesia last year. This is all about him just building up that early momentum. I mean, confidence and momentum are 2 commodities you want on your side in MotoGP. He's got both right now. Never had a podium finish here in MotoGP in COTA, but I think he'll be setting that record straight. And what a chance, you know, if Jorge can have another really strong weekend, he could be going to Jerez in a couple of weeks' time, 25, 30 points clear. Yeah, so I think it's that experience and that extra maturity which is really paying dividends for Jorge. And if he can get on a roll, well, he'll be tough to stop. Especially when you look at his form and his pace, it goes without saying. You guys at home know by now just how good Jorge Martin is over that sprint format. The fact that he's got that in his back pocket, and he now looks as though he's figured it out on a Sunday as well. Every year, he's becoming more mature, as you say. Consistency is coming, which was a big question mark of him going back a couple of years. You feel with the team around him as well, as you say, it's going to take a lot of stopping at the moment. And even at this early stage, the likes of Bagnaia, Marquez, Binder, those that want to be fighting for the World Championship will know that they need to try and stop this momentum from really growing.
It's been good as well. There's been no obvious hangover, has there, from the disappointment of missing out last year in the last round of the championship. You know, and what's been very impressive about Jorge so far this year as well, Jack, is he hasn't really, what you'd say, fully gelled or fully clicked with that GP24. He keeps having this chatter issue on softer tyres, rear its ugly head, which has sort of affected him a little bit in qualifying. So he's actually getting the best out of a motorcycle right now that he doesn't actually feel like he's completely happy with and completely comfortable with. And I think Jorge, he's a cocky little fellow, which we like, don't we? He did say after Qatar, when I figure out what I need to get the best out of this GP24, I feel like I could be unbeatable, which is an ominous sort of threat coming out of the words of Martin, because, like I say, if Jorge can get on a roll, then he's, without any question, got the speed, and with that extra bit of experience, he could be a real tough man to topple off that top of the championship now.
For sure. Before we hand over to first of 3 press conferences coming your way this afternoon here from Austin, Texas, let's just throw another couple of names that definitely could be contenders this year. The first being Enea Bastianini, of course, won here back in 2022 on the Gresini Ducati. Yep. And you feel Maverick Vinales had a very, very promising and pleasing weekend up to the final lap in Portimao, where he should have had a sprint win and a podium. Those two seem to be growing in confidence and have a little bit of momentum coming here this weekend. Are those another 2 names we should keep our eyes on?
I'm saying, Jack, could not agree more. I mean, Enea Bastianini had a fantastic Portimao. He's fit and he's fast and looks back to his best. He was the winner here in 2022. I think he said that was the best of his 5 Grand Prix victories. Huge confidence taken from Portimao. Pole position, fighting for the sprint podium, fighting for the win in the race, and poor old Maverick Vinales. I mean, without that gearbox issue, Portimao would have been his best Aprilia weekend. Yeah. Front row, first Tissot sprint win where he looked so good, and on course for a nailed-on second in the Grand Prix. Maverick really should have been coming here 3rd in the World Championship. I'm sure he'll bounce back. So, yeah, I mean, of all the years I think we've been coming to COTA, Jack, this is probably one of the hardest years to call it. I think when all's said and done, Mark's going to be the favourite, but he's not going to have it his all own way.
No, he's certainly not, and that is what is going to make it absolutely unmissable viewing this weekend. We've almost taken it for granted now that every venue we rock up at in MotoGP in recent years, that there's going to be a minimum of 7 or 8 contenders. Certainly feels that that is definitely the case here this weekend, and there's a few storylines bubbling away, just ready to boil over, which we certainly can't wait to get our teeth into. Right, 3 press conferences, as I say, coming your way here in Austin, Texas. In around half an hour's time, we'll kick off our first one by speaking to the top 3 men in the World Championship. Then following that, we'll get the opportunity to hear from Marc Marquez, Pecco Bagnaia, Fabio Quartararo, and Pedro Acosta as well. What a blockbuster press conference that is going to be. I'm interested to hear what those 4 guys have to say. But we kick things off with a very special press conference indeed. A new era is upon us here at MotoGP after Liberty Media are set to acquire MotoGP in the coming months ahead. And to talk us through that new deal and what is to come for this great sport, we're joined by Donna Sports CEO Carmelo Espeleta, Carlos Espeleta, and Dan Rossamondo as well.
So welcome everybody to